Okay, so now we're going to keep wrapping a little bit down the length. You'll notice now I'm wrapping in the other direction, right? I started wrapping this way, we went around the taper, now we're wrapping towards the length of the core. Okay, so what we're going to start to do is we're going to bend the teardrop loop around this way. And we're going to start to curve all the core around it. So I want to make a stitch into the hole. I'm a little too far this way because I want to go in here, so I'm going to wrap a little bit more. Oh my god. Okay, I'm sorry, they're really getting my little neighbor down there. Okay, so I have wrapped far enough. I like the position I'm at. I can go directly across and into that little hole. So I'm going to take my plastic needle. I'm going to thread this through. It does help if you lick the end of your yarn. A little gross, but it helps. Okay, so let's look at where we're going. So my yarn is coming, for me right now, from underneath. It's going under and over. So I'm gonna follow just the direction that I've been wrapping in. If you're wrapping the other way, that's okay. Your needle is just gonna come in from the other side. So basically, we're going to make a stitch that connects this core this coil that I'm working on to this coil. It's gonna go in through the center in this case. So I'm gonna go up and around and inside that hole in the loop. I'm pinching it close into this shape with my left hand, and with the yarn I'm making a nice tight stitch. So I went in once, I'm going to go in again. So under, over, inside. And this is securing these two coils together. Okay, good. That's nice and secure. Now I'm going to keep wrapping this white core, right? That's what I'm covering. So I'm going to go around. It might come loose a little bit in the beginning. That's okay. I'll start to kind of shove it underneath.
I'm not wrapping around the entire teardrop loop and the core. I'm just wrapping around the white core.
Wrapping. A little bit more. I'm gonna add more yarn. I'm wrapping towards the length of the core. What I'm going to start to do is bend the core around this loop that we made in the center, and it's going to start to form the coils. So I'm going to bend it. I have done probably actually about 20 wraps here, so it is time for me to do a stitch into the center. So in the beginning, there's a lot of bending, a lot of pinching. Okay, so I'm gonna pinch this in place. I wanna connect these two coils. So I'm wrapping, my yarn is coming under, it's gonna go over and inside that center of the teardrop loop. Make a nice tight stitch. Now again, I'm going over, going in. Generally, we do 2 stitches. Okay, now these two coils are connected and they're nice and snug. And now I keep wrapping. So right after I do a stitch, I have to be pretty careful, make sure that I'm covering everything. Okay. Wrapping. Okay, so I'm not counting my wraps. I probably should be, but I think I need a little more. 2, 4, 5. Okay. That looks like I need another stitch. So the stitches are gonna hold everything together. So again, I'm gonna pinch with my non-dominant hand. I'm gonna grab my needle. I'm coming from underneath. I'm gonna go over and in to the center to make a stitch that's gonna connect these two coils. I made one, I'm gonna do a second one. Make sure you're pulling nice and tight on your stitches. This will get your coils together really snug. Okay, so I'm gonna keep wrapping. I'm wrapping.
If you run out of yarn at this point, you can actually do the yarn changing method. So you're gonna have to have enough of a tail of the yarn you're working on. You can go watch the how to change yarn video and apply that method here.
I'm gonna keep wrapping, wrapping, wrapping. So you'll notice like I'm wrapping kind of over, around, and towards myself, around, towards me. This is how I do it. Obviously, if you're left-handed, you're gonna go the other way. If you prefer just to wrap in another direction, that's okay. So I'm gonna keep wrapping. You'll notice this is about double of the space between my stitches last time, but I want to make a stitch that connects it to this coil, and there's a little hole right here. There's a crevice, right? That space between these two coils. So I wrap until I'm far enough to make a neat looking stitch into that space. So I'm coming from under, I'm gonna go over and make a stitch that's going to connect my two coils. So it would be helpful for me to kind of bend this around even more, pinch it in place with my non-dominant hand, and pull it nice and tight. So I did one stitch, I'm gonna do another one. Do this again, okay. I can adjust it. I want my stitches to like line up. Okay, there we go. So you'll notice this time I didn't go into the teardrop center. I just went into the space next to the coil that I want to connect to. So I went in here. From now on, you probably shouldn't be going into the center unless that's a stylistic choice. But we're going to be going just into these spaces between the coils.
Here is a clip from later on in my sample, but I have different colors of yarn, so you will see very clearly where the stitches go.
So I'm coming from underneath, I'm going around and over. I'm going to point my needle in here so I can make a stitch over these two coils. Position it exactly where I want it. So you can see my stitch came from here. Now it's going over the blue. It's going in here, underneath, and around this blue coil. And I've come back. I'm going to do it one more time. Okay, and pull it really nice and snug. So now these two coils are tied together. So I've connected these two. I went into this space. Now I'm going to keep wrapping. I'm going to count this time. 1, 2, 3, 26. I'm ready to do a stitch right there. So I did 26 wraps, maybe that's my measurement. I'm gonna bend this into place with my non-dominant hand. I wanna make a stitch that is going to connect these two. So it's gonna hold them together. So I'm coming from underneath, going in, pulling all the way through, and holding them together really tight. I'm gonna go again. And pull really nice and tight. Okay, so this stitch kind of disappears in here, but it's going around both of these coils and it's connecting them. It's holding them together. So that's what I want. That's what's gonna make a strong basket. So I'm still wrapping. So at this point, really all you're gonna do for the rest of the basket is wrapping and making stitches. So making regular stitches is very important. That's what's gonna hold your basket together. If you notice that your coils are like really loose and floppy, you need to be making more stitches. I usually just like with my eyes measure like, is that the same distance? And it is. So it's time for me to make another stitch. I'm gonna pinch it into place. It gets easier as it gets bigger. Take my needle, I'm coming from underneath, and I'm gonna go in here to make a stitch that covers both of these coils. I'm gonna take it, pull it through, nice snug stitch, one more time. So you'll notice I'm keeping my stitches lined up very close to each other. I prefer the look of a stitch like that. I keep wrapping. So I am going to stop at this point. I'm gonna keep going. So I'm wrapping, wrapping, wrapping. So at this point, right, we're no longer making stitches in the teardrop center. We are past that point. We are making stitches into the space between coils. And we're connecting the coil that we're working on with the coil that's above that one.